Dad, why are they looking at you like that? Tommy Harper was 9 years old the night he watched security guards empty his father's pockets in front of 200 people. The Westfield Academy Spring Gala, white tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, women in evening gowns whispering behind champagne flutes. And there, by the service entrance, his dad, Daniel Harper, the caterer, standing perfectly still as rough hands pulled out his worn leather wallet, his car keys, his phone. Then the notebook. The one Daniel carried everywhere. The one Tommy had seen him writing in late at night when he thought his son was asleep. Brown leather, edges frayed, pages swollen from years of use. The security guard held it up like evidence. "What's this?" the CEO demanded. Rebecca Morrison. Tommy knew her. Her son was in his class. She was pointing at Daniel like he was a criminal. Daniel's voice came out quiet. "It's personal." But by then, something had already shifted in the room, because standing near the back, a woman with silver hair had gone completely still. Eleanor Morrison, the former principal, Tommy's principal before she retired. And the look on her face, what did she know that no one else did? 3 hours earlier, Daniel's alarm had gone off in the dark. 5:30 a.m. The screen was cracked, had been for 2 years. But it still worked. He'd learned to live with things that were broken, but functional. His whole life was like that now. Their apartment was small, 1 bedroom. Tommy slept in the bedroom. Daniel took the couch. It wasn't ideal, but it was home. The walls were thin enough that Daniel could hear Tommy breathing at night, could hear when his son had nightmares, could be there in seconds if needed. That was worth any amount of back pain from a lumpy couch. He moved quietly through the morning routine. Shower in the cramped bathroom with the tile that needed replacing. The hot water lasted exactly 7 minutes before turning lukewarm. Daniel had timed it. He took 5-minute showers now, left the extra 2 minutes for Tommy. He made breakfast the way he always did. 2 pieces of toast, scrambled eggs from the carton. Nothing fancy, but it was consistent. Consistent mattered when you were 9 and your mother had left without warning. Consistent meant Dad would always be there. Breakfast would always be ready. The world might be uncertain, but this, toast and eggs at 6 a.m., this was solid. Tommy shuffled into their small kitchen at 6, wearing his Westfield Academy uniform, khaki pants, navy polo shirt. The shirt was getting tight across the shoulders, growing fast, too fast. Daniel made a mental note. Need to pick up extra shifts this month. New uniform shirts weren't cheap, $45 each, and Tommy needed at least 2 to rotate through the week. Daniel set the plate down. Tommy sat. They had this rhythm, father and son, just the 2 of them for 6 years now. "Sleep okay?" Daniel asked. Tommy nodded, but Daniel noticed the slight shadows under his son's eyes, same as his own. "Nervous about anything today?" Tommy shrugged. That 9-year-old shrug that meant yes, but I don't want to talk about it. "The gala's tonight," Tommy said finally. His voice was careful, the way kids sound when they're trying not to hurt your feelings. "Are you working it?" Daniel knew this was coming, had been dreading it for weeks. "Yeah, buddy. Elite Events called last month. It's good money, and I'll get to see you there." Tommy pushed eggs around his plate. "Will you wear the uniform?" The white shirt, the black vest, the bow tie that always felt like it was strangling him. "Yeah, that's what they require." "Oh." That single word carried so much weight. Daniel heard everything Tommy wasn't saying. The shame of having a father who served appetizers while other kids' parents sat at donor tables. The fear that classmates would see, would whisper, would make connections that Tommy had been carefully avoiding. Tommy had told his friends his dad worked in events management. Not technically a lie, but not the truth either. And Daniel had let him believe that half-truth was enough protection. "Tommy," Daniel started, then stopped. He wanted to say something profound, wanted to tell his son that there was no shame in honest work, that every job mattered, that dignity came from how you treated people, not from what you did for a living. But Tommy was 9, and kids at elite private schools could be brutal. Daniel had overheard enough conversations during pickup, had seen the way certain parents looked at the scholarship families, had watched his son learn to code switch, to talk differently around wealthy classmates, to hide parts of himself that didn't fit the Westfield mold. How do you tell a 9-year-old that the world is unfair, that people will judge you based on your father's job title, that kindness and character matter less than zip codes and bank accounts? You can't. Not really. Not in a way that doesn't break something inside them. So instead, Daniel hummed, a melody he'd been working on for weeks, something soft and hopeful, the kind of song that said, everything words couldn't. Tommy looked up. "Is that a new song?" "Maybe. Still figuring it out." "What's it about?" "It's about a kid who's braver than he knows, a kid who does hard things even when he's scared." Tommy was quiet for a moment. Then, "Is it about me?" Daniel's throat tightened. "Yeah, buddy, it's about you." Tommy took another bite of eggs. "Will you finish it?" "Eventually. Songs take time. You can't rush them." "Like people?" Daniel smiled. "Exactly like people." They ate in comfortable silence. Daniel watched his son, noticed things. The way Tommy's hair needed cutting. Daniel would do it himself this weekend, save the $15 a barber would charge. The way Tommy's pants were getting short. Maybe they could hit the thrift store, find something that fit better. The way Tommy carefully folded his napkin when he finished. A small gesture of care in a life that required so much carefulness. "Dad?" Tommy said as he carried his plate to the sink. "Yeah." "Do you ever miss teaching?" The question hit harder than Daniel expected. He'd been so careful not to talk about it. Didn't want Tommy carrying guilt that wasn't his to carry. "Sometimes," Daniel admitted. "But I'd rather be your dad than anything else in the world. That's not a sacrifice, Tommy. That's a choice. And I'd make it again every single time." Tommy nodded, but Daniel could see his son processing, trying to understand how a father's love could be both gift and burden, how sacrifice could be willing but still hurt. They drove to Westfield in Daniel's Honda Civic, 2007 model, 230,000 miles on the odometer. The car had been new once, back when he and Sarah were newlyweds, back when they'd thought a teacher's salary would be enough, back when the future looked simpler. The radio had stopped working last winter. Daniel couldn't afford to fix it. $200, the mechanic quoted, $200 that could buy groceries for 3 weeks. So they drove in silence. Except it wasn't really silence. They had their voices. Daniel hummed the melody, the brave kid song. Tommy joined in with a harmony, a perfect third above the melody, and Daniel's heart swelled with pride. He'd taught Tommy that years ago, when harmonies were just a game they played to pass time. Now Tommy could find harmonies instinctively, by ear, the way some kids could solve math problems or spell impossible words. Musical gift. Daniel had it. Tommy had inherited it. And maybe that was the only inheritance that mattered. The drive took 12 minutes. Daniel knew every traffic light, every shortcut, every moment where he could steal a few extra seconds with his son before handing him over to a world that didn't always see Tommy's worth. "Dad?" Tommy said as they pulled into the school's loop. "Yeah, buddy? Thanks for breakfast." Such a simple thing. But Tommy said it every morning, like he understood, even at 9, that breakfast wasn't automatic. That his father woke up at 5:30 to make sure those eggs were hot, the toast was ready, that at least one part of Tommy's day was predictable and warm. "You're welcome," Daniel said. "Love you." Love you too. Daniel watched Tommy get out, hitch his backpack higher, square his shoulders in that way that meant he was preparing himself. Tommy glanced back once, their ritual, and waved small. Not the enthusiastic wave of younger kids, the careful wave of someone who'd learned to measure displays of affection against social cost. Then Tommy disappeared into the crowd of students. Designer backpacks, North Face jackets, AirPods and iPhones, and the kind of easy confidence that came from never worrying about whether there'd be enough money for new shoes. Daniel sat in the parking lot for a moment longer than necessary, watched the building swallow his son. Westfield Academy. Red brick. Ivy covered. Founded in 1923. The kind of school that prepared students for Princeton and Yale and Harvard. The kind of school where Daniel's teacher salary could never have afforded tuition. But 6 years ago, when he was still Mr. Harper, he'd been part of this place, had walked these halls with purpose, had been greeted by name. "Good morning, Mr. Harper," from students who actually meant it. "Great lesson yesterday," from colleagues who respected his work. Now he parked in the service lot. 6 years ago, those same doors had closed behind him for what he thought was the last time. He'd carried a box of his belongings, framed photos, teaching materials, the coffee mug students had given him that said, "World's okayest music teacher," and Eleanor Morrison had walked him to his car. She'd been principal then, 3 years from retirement, and she'd looked at him with such sadness. "Daniel," she'd said, "are you sure about this?" He wasn't sure. Not at all. But Sarah had left. Tommy needed childcare. Teacher salary was $42,000 before taxes, $31,000 after. Childcare was $1,500 a month. Rent was $1,200. That left $400 a month for food, utilities, car payment, insurance, medical bills, everything else. The math didn't work. It never had. But when Sarah was there, her income filled the gaps. When Sarah left, the gaps became chasms. "I have to," Daniel had told Eleanor. "Tommy needs stability. I can't give him that on this salary." "What if we could increase?" "There's no budget for raises. I know that. Everyone knows that. It's not your fault. It's just court or reality." Eleanor had hugged him. Rare for her. She wasn't a huggy person. "You're one of the best teachers we've ever had. If circumstances change, if you ever want to come back, we'll make room." He'd believed her in that moment, had even kept her business card in his wallet. But as months turned into years, as he worked triple shifts just to keep the lights on, coming back felt less like possibility and more like fantasy. Now here he was. Same parking lot, different role. Daniel checked his phone. 3 texts from his various jobs. "Janitor shift, 7:11 a.m. today. Don't forget the gym floors need waxing. Riverside Community Center. Gala set up 4 p.m. sharp. Uniform required. You're on Section 2. Elite events. Can you cover Friday night?" Driver called out. "Quick ride." He typed back confirmations. "Yes, yes, yes. Always? Yes." Because saying no meant less money, and less money meant hard choices about whether Tommy's asthma inhaler prescription could wait another week, whether they could afford the field trip fee, whether new shoes were truly necessary, or if the old ones had a few more months left. Daniel drove to his first job, janitor at Riverside Community Center, $7 above minimum wage, 20 hours a week. He'd been there 3 years, showed up on time. Did good work, never complained. The director liked him, trusted him with the keys, let him work independently. He parked behind the building, changed into work clothes, jeans, old t-shirt, steel-toe boots, grabbed his cleaning supplies from the trunk, bleach, mop, industrial vacuum, rubber gloves. The gym floors needed waxing. That meant 3 hours on his hands and knees, stripping old wax, applying new coats, buffing until the surface shined. His back would ache. His knees would protest. But the work was honest, and honest work had its own dignity. Daniel started in the far corner, put in earbuds, listened to nothing. Battery on his phone was at 15%, needed to save it for emergencies. But the earbuds created a barrier. Meant people wouldn't try to chat. Meant he could work in his own head, compose melodies, think about the song for Tommy. Halfway through the waxing, he heard something through the wall. Music, kids' voices. The community center ran after-school programs, art, sports, music. Daniel stopped, listened. Someone was teaching piano, basic scales, C major, G major, D major. The kind of foundational work that seemed boring but was actually essential. Build strong foundations, and everything else followed. He heard a kid struggling, hitting wrong notes, frustrated. Then he heard the teacher's voice, patient, encouraging. It's okay. Try again. Nobody plays perfectly the first time, or the 100th time. Music is about progress, not perfection. Daniel's chest ached. That used to be him, that patient voice, that belief that every kid could learn if given the right support and enough time. He missed it so much it physically hurt. But missing something didn't change reality. Reality was wax and bleach and a bank account that never quite had enough. Reality was Tommy needing new shoes and Daniel calculating whether they could skip groceries for a few days to afford them. Reality was working 3 jobs and still barely keeping their heads above water. Daniel finished the floors, clocked out. The time card said 11:07 a.m., 7 minutes over. The director would probably round down. That was fine. Daniel wasn't here to fight over 7 minutes. He drove home, showered again, hotter this time, letting the water ease his aching back, changed into the catering uniform. White shirt, black pants, black vest, bow tie. The shirt was borrowed from another caterer who'd quit last month. It was slightly too big. Daniel cinched the vest tighter, tried to look presentable. He grabbed his messenger bag, checked the contents like he always did. Wallet, keys, phone charger, and the notebook. The leather was worn soft from years of handling. Daniel had bought it with his first teaching paycheck, had thought he'd fill it with lesson plans, song ideas, notes about students' progress. He'd filled half of it during his teaching years. The other half, the past 6 years, contained fragments, grocery lists, shift schedules, bills he needed to pay, occasional melodies when he had energy to write. And in the back section, 7 songs. 1 for each year Tommy had lived without a mother. Short pieces, simple melodies, lyrics that tried to capture what Daniel couldn't always say out loud. You are loved. You are enough. I see you. You matter. Songs he sang quietly when he tucked Tommy in at night, when his son was almost asleep and wouldn't remember them consciously, but might carry them somewhere deeper. Daniel put the notebook back in his bag, zipped it carefully. This bag held his life, his past and his present, and the small hopes he still carried for the future. He checked the time. 2:30 p.m., had 90 minutes before Gala setup started. Just enough time to grab coffee, sit in his car, breathe. The gymnasium had been transformed. Daniel arrived at 4 and barely recognized the space. It didn't look like a school anymore. Someone had spent serious money turning it into something from a magazine. White drapes hung from the ceiling, creating the illusion of a ballroom. Must have taken hours to install. Crystal chandeliers, rented, had to be, cast warm light across the space. Round tables covered in silk tablecloths, each setting perfect. Silverware arranged just so. Wine glasses positioned at precise angles. Centerpieces with fresh flowers that probably cost more than Daniel's monthly grocery budget. An orchestra was setting up in the corner. Real musicians, union guys with their own instruments, their own stands, their own air of professional competence. Daniel watched them tune, watched the way they handled their instruments with casual expertise. The cellist adjusted her bow with muscle memory. The violinist's fingers found positions without looking. That used to be his world. These were his people. Or had been. Now he was on the other side, the serving side. "You're late." Marcus, the elite events supervisor, didn't look up from his clipboard. 7 minutes. I'm docking your time." "I clocked in at 4:07. That's late. Table assignments are posted over there. You've got section 2. Tables 12 through 18. 7 tables, 8 guests each. 56 people total. You'll be responsible for drinks, appetizers, and clearing between courses. Questions? No. Good. White gloves are in the supply closet. Make sure your bow tie is straight. These people notice everything." Marcus finally looked at Daniel. Gave him that once-over that said, "You're barely acceptable, but I don't have better options." "Try to look professional." Daniel bit back a response. Professional. He'd had a master's degree from Berklee College of Music, had published research on music therapy techniques, had taught hundreds of students, many of whom had gone on to prestigious music programs. But tonight, professional meant white gloves and a straight bow tie. He found the supply closet, grabbed gloves, size large, still too small, squeezed his hands uncomfortably, checked his bow tie in the small mirror, adjusted it, smoothed his shirt, borrowed and ill-fitting, but clean. The other caterers were gathering, about 20 people. Daniel recognized a few. They rotated through elite events jobs. There was Maria, working her way through nursing school. James, retired veteran trying to supplement Social Security. Keisha, single mom with 3 kids and 2 jobs. Good people, hard workers, invisible to the guests they'd serve tonight. "Listen up," Marcus clapped twice, military style. "This is a high-profile event. Westfield Academy board members, major donors, the kind of people who can end your employment with one phone call to corporate. So, smile, be polite, don't speak unless spoken to. If someone asks you a question, keep answers brief." "Yes, sir." "No, ma'am." "Right away." "Got it?" Murmured agreements. "One more thing. Some of you might have kids who go here, on scholarship or whatever. Tonight you're not parents, you're staff. Keep it professional. Don't embarrass yourselves trying to talk to your kids in front of their friends. Understood?" Daniel's jaw tightened. Understood. Don't embarrass yourselves. Don't remind these wealthy people that the scholarship kids have parents, have lives, have dignity. He caught Maria's eye. She gave him a look that said, "I know, it's awful, but we need the money." He nodded back. They spent the next 2 hours in final preparation. Daniel learned the wine list. 3 reds, 4 whites, 1 champagne. Memorized dietary restrictions. Table 14 had someone with a shellfish allergy. Table 16 requested kosher options. Practiced the choreography of service. Approach from the left, clear from the right. Never reach across a guest. Always keep your back straight. Make eye contact, but don't hold it too long. At 6:45, Marcus gave the 5-minute warning. "Guests arrive at 7. Positions. Look alive." Daniel took his station near Section 2, watched through the entrance as cars began pulling up. BMWs, Teslas, a few Mercedes, 1 Bentley, the kind of vehicles that cost more than Daniel would make in 5 years. The guests emerged, designer gowns, tailored suits. The women moved carefully in heels that probably cost $400. The men had that ease of people who'd never questioned their place in the world. Confident, entitled, important. Daniel watched them enter, watched them greet each other with practiced enthusiasm, air kisses, firm handshakes. "So good to see you," in tones that suggested it was good to be seen. He spotted Tommy arriving with a group of scholarship students. They'd carpooled. Daniel knew the family, the Martinezes. Their daughter Rosa was Tommy's friend. Tommy wore his one good outfit, khaki pants, from the thrift store. Daniel had ironed them 3 times. Button-down shirt, hand-me-down from a cousin. Shoes that were getting tight, but would have to last a few more months. Tommy looked nervous, scanning the room, looking for his father and dreading finding him. Their eyes met across the space. Daniel saw his son's face do that complicated thing, love and embarrassment mixing like oil and water. Tommy raised his hand, small wave, careful, measured. Daniel waved back, mouthed, "Proud of you." Tommy nodded, looked away, headed toward table 23 with his friends, the scholarship table. Daniel knew it immediately. It wasn't explicitly labeled. Westfield was too tasteful for that. But it was obvious. Tucked in the far corner, near the kitchen doors, farthest from the stage. The kids sitting there wore thrift store clothes and carried themselves differently, more careful, more aware that they were guests in someone else's world. The donor tables were up front, best views, closest to the bar. The families who wrote 6-figure checks got 6-figure treatment. Daniel had seen this before, at every school event, the subtle segregation. The way money created invisible barriers, even in spaces that preached inclusion and diversity. "Excuse me, could we get some water?" Daniel turned. Table 14, older couple. The woman wore pearls. The man wore a watch that probably cost more than Daniel's car. "Right away," Daniel said, grabbed his pitcher, filled their glasses, smiled. "Professional." "Thank you," the woman said. Didn't look at him, didn't register him as a person. He was just a function, a glass-filling function. Daniel moved through his section. Water, water, water. 7 tables, 56 people, 56 glasses filled. Then wine, red or white. This guest wants champagne. That guest needs a fresh napkin. This one dropped a fork. That one wants to know where the restrooms are. Constant movement, constant attention, constant invisibility. At 7:45, Rebecca Morrison made her entrance. Daniel noticed her before anyone else did. Hard not to. She moved like someone who expected attention and got it. Black gown, sleek, expensive, the kind that required a specific body type and professional tailoring. Her hair was done in an updo that had taken hours, professional makeup, and on her wrist, the diamond bracelet. It caught every light in the room, refracted, glittered, sparkled. Impossible to miss. Rebecca was working the room, stopping at each table, greeting donors by name. "Richard, Patricia, so wonderful to see you both. Thank you for your generous support." Practiced, polished, performative. Daniel watched her approach table 12, his section. He stood nearby, ready to refill drinks if needed. Rebecca was talking to the Harrisons. Major donors had endowed the new library. "Your contribution will change lives. Truly. We're so grateful." Mrs. Harrison noticed the bracelet. "Rebecca, that's stunning." Rebecca held up her wrist, performed modesty. "It belonged to my mother. She wore it when she was principal here. $45,000, but honestly, the sentimental value is priceless." Daniel glanced across the room. Saw Eleanor Morrison sitting quietly at a side table. She was wearing a simple navy dress, simple silver necklace, nothing flashy. She looked older than Daniel remembered, more tired. She was watching her daughter with an expression he couldn't quite read. Pride, sadness, something complicated. Eleanor caught his eye. For just a second, their gazes met. Did she recognize him? After 6 years? He looked different now, thinner, more worn, hidden behind a catering uniform and white gloves. If she recognized him, she didn't show it, just looked away. Returned to her quiet observation. At 8:15, Rebecca took the microphone. The room quieted. Welcome, everyone, to Westfield Academy's Spring Gala. Applause, polite, expected. Tonight, we're raising funds for our new STEM facility. But more than that, we're investing in the future, in brilliant minds, in the next generation of leaders and innovators. Standard speech. Daniel had heard variations of it at every fundraiser. Replace STEM facility with Arts Wing, or Athletic Complex, or Diversity Initiative, and the words were interchangeable. But then Rebecca held up her wrist, made sure everyone could see the bracelet. My mother, many of you know her as Principal Morrison, though she's been retired for 3 years now. She wore this bracelet every day during her 30 years of service to Westfield. It's worth $45,000, but the sentimental value is truly beyond measure. She paused for effect. Tonight I'm wearing it in her honor, as a reminder that Westfield's true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in legacy, in the lives we touch, in the futures we shape. More applause. People were nodding, moved by the sentiment. Daniel glanced at Eleanor again. She was looking down at her lap, her hand touching the simple silver necklace at her throat. She looked deeply uncomfortable, like she wanted to be anywhere but here. Rebecca continued talking, but Daniel stopped listening. He had work to do. Appetizers were coming out, needed to coordinate service with the kitchen. Make sure his section got their courses on time. Stay invisible. Stay professional. The next hour passed in a blur of motion. Appetizers served, plates cleared, wine refilled, bread baskets circulated, main course plated, special dietary requests accommodated. Daniel's feet hurt, his back ached. The white gloves were making his hands sweat. But he kept moving, kept smiling, kept being invisible. At 9:30, something shifted in the room. A woman screamed. Not a polite gasp, a real scream. Sharp, terrified, Rebecca Morrison. My bracelet, her voice cut through the cocktail chatter like a knife. It's gone! The room went silent. That instant, suspended silence when something terrible has just happened, and everyone is trying to process it. Someone stole it! Rebecca's voice was shaking, high, panicked. It was right here, on my wrist, and now it's gone! People started moving, murmuring. The event coordinator appeared. Security guards materialized from the edges of the room. Nobody leaves, Rebecca commanded. Her panic was morphing into rage. Someone in this room stole my mother's bracelet, and nobody leaves until we find it. Guests exchanged glances. Some looked concerned. Others looked annoyed. Being accused of theft, even implicitly, wasn't part of the evening they'd paid for. Rebecca was scanning the crowd, her eyes moving from table to table, looking for someone to blame. Then her gaze landed on the service staff clustered near the kitchen entrance. 20 caterers in identical uniforms. 20 people who'd been moving through the crowd all evening. 20 easy targets. Her eyes narrowed, focused, on Daniel. He was near her table, had been refilling champagne glasses in that section 15 minutes earlier, was standing there now, holding an empty tray, trying to blend into the background. Rebecca walked toward him, fast, purposeful. Everyone watching. Daniel's stomach dropped. He knew what was coming, could see it in her eyes. The accusation forming, the assumption, the leap from proximity to guilt. She pointed at him. You were near my table. Daniel's stomach dropped. Ma'am, I was just clearing. What's your name? Daniel Harper. Her eyes narrowed. Harper. Harper. Why does that sound familiar? She snapped her fingers, like she just remembered something. Tommy Harper, scholarship student. Your son? Daniel nodded. His throat was tight. Rebecca's voice got louder, making sure everyone could hear. How convenient. Scholarship family, service job. And my bracelet goes missing right when you're standing there. The implication was clear. Daniel felt the weight of 200 eyes on him. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I didn't touch your bracelet. I'm happy to show you." "Security!" Rebecca cut him off. "I want this man's bag searched, now!" Time seemed to slow down. Daniel looked across the room. Found Tommy. His son's face was pale, frozen. Watching his father being accused of theft in front of his entire school community. And then, at the back of the room, a woman stood up. Eleanor Morrison. She didn't say anything, just stood, watching, her face unreadable. 2 security guards approached Daniel. Their faces were apologetic but firm. "Sir, we need to check your bag." Daniel could feel his hands trembling, not because he was guilty, but because this was it. The moment every parent with a kid on scholarship feared. Being made an example of. Being reminded that you didn't really belong here. "Of course," he said, cooperative, calm, even though his heart was pounding. He handed over his messenger bag. Brown canvas, worn straps. It had seen better days, like everything else in his life. The guard opened it, laid the contents out on a nearby table like crime scene evidence. The crowd pressed closer. "Watching. Wallet," the guard said. "License," says Daniel Joseph Harper. "Cell phone, iPhone 6, cracked screen. Car keys, Honda. Notebook, leather, looks old. Kazoo, plastic, red. Sheet music, handwritten." Rebecca's voice was sharp with impatience. "That's it? Where's my bracelet?" The guard looked up. "Ma'am, there's no jewelry." "Check the notebook. Maybe he hid it inside." The guard opened the notebook. Pages fanned out. Daniel watched people lean in to see. Dense handwriting, musical notes, sketches. The guard looked confused. "It's lesson plans, student names. Unit 3, rhythm and emotion. Exercise, write your feelings in song." Rebecca waved a hand dismissively. "So he writes. So what? Check all the pockets?" The guard pulled out the kazoo, held it up. Some people in the crowd started laughing. It was absurd. A grown man carrying a plastic toy kazoo. Rebecca's tone was mocking now. A kazoo? How precious. Daniel felt shame rising in his throat, not because he'd done anything wrong, but because everything he valued was being held up for ridicule. His teaching journal, the songs he wrote, the kazoo he kept because, "May I see that?" Eleanor Morrison's voice cut through the noise, quiet but firm. Everyone turned. She was walking forward, slow, deliberate. She was small, maybe 5'4", but her presence filled the space. The guard handed her the notebook. Eleanor held it like it was something sacred. Her fingers traced the handwriting. She flipped through pages, stopped on one. Her breath caught. Daniel saw what she was reading. A page dated September 2019, 6 years ago. Title at the top, Ethan M., Session Notes. And underneath, in Daniel's handwriting, Breakthrough Today. He hummed Twinkle, Twinkle. First sound in months. I think we're going to make it. Eleanor looked up. Her eyes met Daniel's for the first time in 6 years. "Mr. Harper," she said softly. "Principal Morrison," he replied, barely audible. The crowd was confused now, murmuring. "Morrison? Wait, they know each other? Who is this guy?" Rebecca's voice was sharp. "Mother, what are you doing?" Eleanor ignored her. She was still looking at Daniel. "You left so suddenly. We never got to thank you properly." Rebecca stepped forward. "Thank him? For what?" Eleanor finally looked at her daughter. "For saving your son." The room went completely silent. Rebecca's face changed. Confusion. Then something like fear. "What are you talking about?" Eleanor turned to face the crowd. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but Daniel could hear the emotion underneath. 6 years ago, Eleanor began, my grandson lost his father in a car accident. Ethan was 2 years old. After the funeral, he stopped speaking. stopped eating. We took him to therapists, doctors, specialists. Nothing worked. He was disappearing right in front of us. She paused, looked at the notebook in her hands. Then this man, Mr. Daniel Harper, volunteered to stay after school every day for 6 months. No extra pay. He just showed up, brought instruments, sang songs, sat on the floor with my grandson and waited. Eleanor's voice cracked slightly. She steadied herself. Daniel used music therapy. He never pushed, never demanded, just created a safe space where a traumatized little boy could find his voice again. And one day, I'll never forget this, Ethan hummed 3 notes, just 3 notes, of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Daniel cried. I cried. It was the first sound Ethan had made in 4 months. The crowd was transfixed. Daniel could see faces changing, guilt spreading through the room like a stain. Eleanor pulled a folded piece of sheet music from the back of the notebook, unfolded it carefully. He even wrote a song for Ethan, she said. Look at the title. She held it up so people could see. Little Star Finding His Way Home. And underneath, in smaller print, for Ethan, age 3. You are braver than you know. Eleanor's eyes were wet now. This man brought my grandson back to us. Rebecca was standing frozen. Her face had gone pale. I didn't know. You never told me the details. Ethan doesn't remember. He was too young, Eleanor said quietly. But I remember. I remember everything. Mr. Harper gave us our boy back. She turned to Daniel, asked the question that needed to be asked. So why, Mr. Harper, are you carrying trays instead of teaching? The room waited, every person holding their breath. Daniel looked at Tommy. His son was still sitting at the scholarship table, tears on his cheeks, waiting to hear his father's answer. Daniel spoke. His voice was steady now, because teaching doesn't pay enough to raise a child alone. The truth. Raw, simple, devastating, he continued, needing them to understand. My wife left when Tommy was 3. I had a choice. Keep the job I loved and barely make rent, or quit and work 3 jobs to give my son stability. I chose him. I'd choose him every time. Eleanor's whisper carried across the silent room. You chose love. No one moved. The weight of what Daniel had sacrificed, what he was still sacrificing, settled over everyone. And then Tommy stood up. He walked through the crowd toward his father, a 9-year-old boy moving past tables full of wealthy adults, past his classmates, past the security guard still holding his father's belongings. He reached Daniel, grabbed his hand. It's okay, Dad, Tommy said. His voice was loud for a 9-year-old, clear. I'm not ashamed. Daniel looked down at his son, saw tears, but also something else, determination, courage. Tommy kept talking. I told my friends you work in events because I thought they'd make fun, but you know what? You're the best dad ever. You make me breakfast every morning. You write songs for me. You. His voice cracked. You're always there. Daniel knelt down, eye level with his son. Buddy, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Tommy's chin was up, defiant. Because you taught me that being brave means telling the truth, even when it's hard. So I'm telling the truth now. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. Daniel pulled Tommy into a hug, felt his son's small body shaking with sobs. The room was watching them. Everyone was watching. But Daniel didn't care anymore. Let them see. Let them see a father who loved his son. Let them see a son who was learning what real strength looked like. When they pulled apart, Daniel looked up, saw faces in the crowd. Some people were crying. Others looked guilty, ashamed, like they were finally seeing something they'd been walking past for years. Eleanor walked over to Rebecca, gently, like approaching a wounded animal. "Sweetheart," she said quietly, "you owe this man an apology." Rebecca was struggling, pride fighting with guilt. "Mother, I was just protecting. You were protecting nothing. You were judging, and you were wrong." Rebecca looked at Daniel, then at Tommy, then back at Eleanor. Her face crumpled. "Mr. Harper," she said, voice small, I made a terrible mistake." Before Daniel could respond, another parent, a woman named Sandra, rushed over. She was holding something. "Rebecca," Sandra said breathlessly, "I found your bracelet." Everyone turned. Sandra held up the diamond bracelet. "It fell between the seat cushions at your table. Must have slipped off when you were greeting people. I saw it glinting when I dropped my napkin." A collective gasp went through the crowd. Rebecca's face went from pale to bright red, mortified. She looked at Daniel, at Tommy, at her mother. "Oh God, I accused you. In front of everyone, in front of your son." She was starting to cry now. "There's no excuse for what I did." Daniel stood, still holding Tommy's hand. He could have said something cutting, could have made her feel worse. God knows she deserved it. Instead, he said, "We all make mistakes, Mrs. Morrison." Rebecca shook her head. "Why? Why are you being kind to me? I humiliated you." Daniel thought about it. "Because someone once told me that grace means giving people what they don't deserve. And I've needed a lot of grace in my life. Maybe you need some too." Silence. Then Eleanor started clapping. Slow, deliberate, her hands coming together with intention. One by one, people joined her. First a few, then more, then everyone. The crowd rose to their feet, standing ovation building like a wave. Daniel stood there, overwhelmed, not sure where to look. Tommy squeezed his hand tight. Eleanor walked forward until she was standing directly in front of Daniel. "Mr. Harper," she said formally, "I have a question for you." "Yes, Principal Morrison?" A slight smile. "I'm not principal anymore. But Mrs. Chen, our current principal, is here tonight. And I happen to know Westfield is looking for a music teacher." Daniel's heart stopped. I can't afford to." Eleanor held up a hand. "The board recently passed salary reform. We allocated budget for competitive wages, $68,000 starting, plus full benefits and pension. There's also a childcare program for staff children. Tommy could stay after school until you're done with lessons." Daniel felt dizzy. 68,000? You'd be able to support Tommy, on one job, doing what you love. The room was watching, waiting. Daniel looked at Tommy. "What do you think, buddy? Should I be Mr. Harper again?" Tommy's face lit up. "Yes. Then I could tell everyone my dad's a teacher." The crowd laughed. Warm, genuine. But Daniel hesitated. He needed to say something. Something important. "Principal Morrison," he said slowly, "I appreciate this more than you know. But I need you all to understand something." Everyone quieted, listening. "For 6 years, I've been invisible. I've cleaned floors, driven strangers home, carried trays at events like this. And yeah, it hurt. But I learned something. There's honor in every kind of work. The janitor who keeps floors clean so kids can learn safely. The driver who gets people home to their families. The caterer who makes events beautiful so you can celebrate." He looked around the room, making eye contact with donors, parents, staff. "Tonight, you all saw me differently when you knew I used to be a teacher. But I was the same person 5 minutes before, same hands, same heart, same love for my son." His voice got stronger. "So if I come back to teach, it won't be because teaching is better than catering. It'll be because I can use my specific gifts to help kids. The way I got to help Ethan. But every person in this room who works a service job, they deserve the same respect. Not because of what they used to be, because of who they are right now." Silence. Then Eleanor spoke. Her voice was thick with emotion. "You're exactly the kind of teacher we need." Daniel smiled. "Then yes." "I accept." The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, people wiping tears. But Daniel held up his hand. "One more thing. On one condition. Every student who works a service job while attending Westfield, catering, cleaning, retail, whatever, they get the same respect as everyone else. No more scholarship tables in the corner. No more separating kids by their parents' income. One community." Eleanor didn't hesitate. "Done." Rebecca stepped forward. Her mascara was smudged from crying. "Mr. Harper, could I say something?" Daniel nodded. Rebecca's voice shook. "I judged you because I was afraid. Afraid that if I wasn't better than someone, I'd be nothing. My mother built this school on kindness and inclusion, and I forgot that." She looked at Eleanor. "I'm sorry, Mom." Eleanor's expression was complex, pride mixed with sadness. "Tell him, not me." Rebecca turned to Daniel. "I'm truly sorry. For the accusation, for the humiliation, for making assumptions about who you are based on the uniform you wear. I was wrong. Completely wrong." She paused. "Ethan is in 4th grade now. Same class as Tommy. Would you consider being his music teacher again? I think he could learn a lot from you. Not just about music, about grace." Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Rebecca Morrison was human after all. Flawed. Capable of growth, like everyone else. "I'd be honored," he said. Rebecca pulled out her checkbook. "I'd like to make a donation to the Teacher Salary Fund, $200,000. Eleanor started to protest. "Rebecca?" "No, Mom. It's what the money should be used for. Not jewelry, not status. But ensuring that people like Mr. Harper never have to choose between their calling and their child again." She wrote the check, handed it to Eleanor. The crowd was silent, moved. Eleanor looked at her daughter. "I'm proud of you." Rebecca smiled through tears. Then she looked at the crowd. "All of you. Think about who you've been walking past, who you've been failing to see. We can do better. We have to do better." The room felt different now, lighter, like something toxic had been released. Tommy tugged Daniel's sleeve. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy." "Can I tell you something?" "Anything." Tommy's voice was quiet but steady. "I was scared earlier. Scared everyone would laugh at you. Scared they'd laugh at me. But you taught me something tonight." "What's that?" "That being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are scared." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "When did you get so wise? I learned it from you." They hugged again, father and son, finally seen for who they truly were. As the gala wound down, people kept approaching Daniel, apologizing, thanking him, sharing stories. A janitor from the school, Marcus, who'd worked there 15 years, shook Daniel's hand and said, "Thank you for saying that. About all work mattering." A single mother whose daughter was on scholarship hugged him and whispered, "You just made it easier for all of us." Daniel packed up his messenger bag, put the notebook back inside, the kazoo, the sheet music, his whole life in a worn canvas bag. Eleanor approached one last time. "Daniel, before you go, I want you to know something." "What's that?" "When you resigned 6 years ago, I wrote a letter of recommendation. I kept it, just in case you ever wanted to teach again. I'd like to give it to you now, even though you don't need it anymore." She pulled an envelope from her purse, handed it to him. Daniel opened it. Read the first line. "Daniel Harper is not just a teacher. He is a healer. He sees the broken places in children and helps them find their voices." His throat tightened. "You kept this? For 6 years? I hoped that you'd come back. I just didn't know it would take a stolen bracelet and a public humiliation to make it happen." She smiled sadly. The universe works in mysterious ways. Daniel folded the letter carefully, put it in his notebook. "Thank you. For everything." "No," Eleanor said firmly. "Thank you. For Ethan. For tonight. For reminding all of us why we're really here." Daniel and Tommy walked out to the parking lot. The Honda Civic was waiting. Same old car. 230,000 miles. But tonight it felt different. Like it was taking them somewhere new. They got in. Daniel started the engine. The radio was still broken. So he hummed. The melody he'd been working on. Tommy joined in. Harmony. Perfect. "That's the song you were working on this morning," Tommy said. "The one about the brave kid." "Yeah," Daniel said. "Want to hear the words?" "Always." Daniel sang softly as they drove. "You held my hand when the world looked away. You stood beside me, found words I couldn't say. We've been invisible, but never alone. Now the light finds us. We're finally home." Tommy was quiet for a moment. Then, "It's about tonight, isn't it? It's about you, about how brave you were. I was scared." "I know. That's what made it brave." They drove in comfortable silence, past the estates with their perfectly manicured lawns, past the shopping center where Daniel had worked retail last Christmas, past the community center where he'd mopped floors that morning. "Dad," Tommy said as they pulled into their apartment complex, "does this mean we're not poor anymore?" Daniel turned off the engine, looked at his son. "We were never poor, buddy. We just didn't have much money. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Poor is when you have nothing. We had each other. We had music. We had love. That's not poor. That's rich in the ways that matter." Tommy thought about this. "But now we'll have money too?" Daniel smiled. "Yeah, now we'll have money too. Enough to get you new uniform shirts when you outgrow them. Enough to fix the car radio. Enough so I can pick you up from school instead of you taking the bus. Will you still write songs for me?" "Every month. That's our tradition. That'll never change." They walked upstairs to their apartment. 1 bedroom, small kitchen. But tonight it felt bigger, like the walls had expanded to make room for hope. Daniel made hot chocolate. They sat on the couch. Tommy fell asleep against his father's shoulder. Daniel pulled out his notebook, opened to a fresh page, wrote at the top, "Tommy's song Third White, the night we were seen." He wouldn't finish it tonight. But he'd start it, because that's what he did. He captured moments, turned them into melodies, made sure his son knew that every day, every struggle, every small victory mattered. 3 months later, Daniel stood in front of a classroom. 20 students, ages 8 to 10. Various instruments scattered around the room. Keyboards, guitars, drums, kazoos. "Okay," Daniel said. "Who wants to share what they wrote this week?" Ethan Morrison raised his hand. Confident now. Healthy. The trauma of losing his father at 2 was still there. It would always be there. But music had given him a language for it. "I wrote this about my grandma," Ethan said. He played a simple piano melody. Sweet, hopeful. "She always believed in people, even when they didn't believe in themselves." Daniel smiled. "Beautiful. What made you think of that?" "She told me a story. About you. About how you helped me when I was little. I don't remember it, but she says you used a kazoo." The class laughed. They all knew the story now. It was legend at Westfield. Mr. Harper. The caterer who turned out to be a music teacher. The man with the kazoo who saved a kid's life. Tommy sat in the back row, grinning, proud. The bell rang. Kids packed up. "See you Monday, Mr. Harper." Tommy stayed behind, helped his dad organize sheet music. "Dad, Did you finish the new song? Daniel pulled out his notebook, the same worn leather one. Just did. Want to hear it? Always. Daniel sat at the piano, played the melody. Simple, beautiful, hopeful. He sang, "You held my hand when the world looked away. You stood beside me, found words I couldn't say. We've been invisible, but never alone. Now the light finds us. We're finally home." Tommy's eyes filled with tears. It's perfect. We're perfect, even in the hard parts. They packed up, walked through the hallway, stopped at a photo on the wall. Recent school gala, different from the spring one. Daniel surrounded by students, all holding instruments, all smiling. Caption underneath, "Mr. Harper's Music Therapy Program, funded by the Morrison Family Foundation." "We're on the wall now?" Tommy said. "Yeah," Daniel replied. "We are." They walked to the parking lot. The Honda Civic was still there, still running. 240,000 miles now. Daniel had gotten the radio fixed, could afford it now. But they usually kept it off anyway, preferred their own music. As they drove home, Tommy said something that stuck with Daniel. "You know what I realized, Dad? That night at the gala, it wasn't about you being saved or redeemed or whatever. You were always enough. We were always enough." Daniel glanced at his son, 9 years old, wise beyond his years. "We just needed other people to see it," Tommy continued. "Exactly." They drove in comfortable silence, and Daniel thought about that night, 3 months ago. The humiliation, the fear, the moment when everything changed. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be seen, not as who you were, not as who you wish you were, but as who you are, broken parts and all. Because that's where grace lives, in the space between who we are and who people think we should be. Daniel still carries that notebook, still writes songs for Tommy, still works hard. Not 3 jobs anymore, but 1 job he does with everything he has. And when people see him now, they see all of him. The teacher, the father, the man who refused to be defined by circumstance. Tommy tells everyone his dad's a teacher, not because he's ashamed of the jobs Daniel worked, but because he's proud of the man who did them. And on quiet nights, when Daniel tucks Tommy into bed, he sometimes sings that song, the one about being seen, about finding home. Tommy joins in. Harmony. Perfect. 2 voices. 1 song. Finally heard.